Hey guys, and welcome back to the Aether Hub. I'm Simon, bringing you another Magic the Gathering video. Today we're learning about one of the biggest mysteries of Kaldheim, one that I thought I figured out before the set's release, but who has to admit now that, well, I wasn't as right as I would like to be. Today let's learn about what we do know about Vorinclex and how he made it to Kaldheim, and speculate on what that could mean for the future of MTG and New Phyrexia. Okay, so first I must admit that I was wrong in my original speculation. I'll include that video linked in the description below if you want to go see me get egg on my face. But in short, I believe that the Sword of the Realms, the device that Tybalt used to jump across Kaldheim, was also used to transport Vorinclex basically randomly from New Phyrexia to Kaldheim just to cause more chaos. I didn't think it really meant much, and I certainly didn't believe that it was tied to maybe a deeper plan for the Phyrexians. I thought it was all just random mayhem conducted by Tybalt. However, with new information, that previous speculation was proven false. But what it does point to is the possible beginnings of a return of New Phyrexia as a threat to the multiverse. And before you become Phyrexianized, why not consider supporting the Aether Hub over on Patreon? You get loads of perks like videos early, sign cards, and most important, your will left completely intact as you're ultimately absorbed into the Phyrexian war machine. Go ahead and check out all the perks, linked in our Patreon in the description below. And with that, let's get back to the lore. The information we got was from the official lore breakdown for the legendaries of Kaldheim, a tool I've used before when Wizards of the Coast decides to provide little blurbs to explain stories of lesser known characters. This time with Kaldheim, every legendary gets this treatment, including Vorinclex. So for the sake of clarity, here's Vorinclex's description, ripped right from that article. And if you want to find that along with all the other legendary creatures and their descriptions, you can find it linked in the description below. Vorinclex is a predator of New Phyrexia. He despises the concept of sentience and wants the multiverse to operate solely on the roles of predator and prey, survival of the fittest for all. When Elesh Norn gained the upper hand on the other Praetors, she knew Vorinclex would be the easiest to influence, as his desires were the basest of all the Praetors. Why Vorinclex arrived in Kaldheim is currently unknown, but the purposes are certainly nefarious. The method he used to travel between planes is also a mystery. Vorinclex's organic parts were destroyed in the journey, leaving only metal and bone. An inquisitive stag sniffing around his remains was enough raw material to begin crafting a new body, and Vorinclex slowly made his way up the forest food chain until he had created a form he found satisfactory. So let's go ahead and break down this description and use it to explain where we stand with Vorinclex in this story. Firstly, the method in which Vorinclex used to get to Kaldheim. I originally believed he was picked up randomly by Tybalt and the Sword of the Realms, but as it turns out, Vorinclex himself sought out this ability to transport across the multiverse. It's currently unclear what that method actually was, or if it was presented to the Phyrexians by an outside source, or if they discovered it in their own research, but I have some pretty good guesses that I'll go through later on in the video. Regardless, it's clear that at least Vorinclex, while on New Phyrexia, found his own way to travel to different planes. Next is the explanation for Vorinclex's change in appearance. I mean, as a character, even on New Phyrexia, Vorinclex wasn't the most handsome praetor. But on Kaldheim, I noted he appeared far more animalistic, more bestial. I believed it was just a new interpretation of his ideologies. Survival of the fittest, natural evolution, etc. But it's actually because the Phyrexian ability to absorb organic material allowed him to take on properties associated with that material. So while he arrived on Kaldheim as nothing more than a pile of metal bones, which we're gonna talk about more, don't worry, Vorinclex quickly builds himself back up by absorbing animal parts. It's why he kinda looks like a cross between stags and bears. He's almost like a chimera of animals found in the forests of Kaldheim. With this blurb, we need to circle back to some other information provided from the official story of Kaldheim, which adds some supportive evidence to what's going on with Vorinclex. Just like the blurb, chapter 3 of the story, which took in consideration Tybalt's perspective of things going on, suggests that it's actually Vorinclex and not Tybalt who's sort of running the show on the real story going on in Kaldheim. We learn from the story that Vorinclex actually hunted down Tybalt already on Kaldheim and seeded him with what we can only suspect to be Phyrexian oil, holding the Planeswalker hostage unless Tybalt helps Vorinclex out with his mission on Kaldheim. Now, I can't be 100% sure that the Phyrexian oil is what Vorinclex seeded Tybalt with. Based on previous lore and MTG history, it was suggested that Planeswalkers, because of their spark, were immune to Phyrexian oil. Thus, they couldn't be completed in the Phyrexian process. So this could just be like a generic poison, or maybe like, ooh, a poison counter that Vorinclex has the antidote for, or maybe they're trying to rewrite what the Phyrexian oil can actually do. Anyway, back to the official story of Kaldheim, we learn that Vorinclex is indeed planning something for this plane, something big that aligns with him and his kind's mission to perfect the multiverse in pure metal and Phyrexian bliss, to spread their inorganic corruption across every plane they possibly can, an homage to their long-lost leader, Yawgmoth, and his sacred teachings. Vorinclex's plans on Kaldheim are still unknown at this point, but what we do know is that he's slowly implanting a metal-like substance over all of its surface. This could be something close to the Phyrexian oil we suggested earlier, which in essence corrupts organic life and turns it into Phyrexianized hybrids, or it could be connected to what we saw with the Mycosynth, like seen in Mycosynth Lattice. Kaya in the story did explain it as being almost fungal looking in appearance and spread, but covered in this metal sheen. This sounds to me like Vorinclex is leaving his own Mycosynth Lattice all over Kaldheim, which means Wizards missed out on a great new opportunity for a reprint here. Darn it. Reprint or not, this spells big trouble for Kaldheim if this is what Vorinclex is actually doing. The Mycosynth Lattice is huge in the story because it's how new Phyrexia really attacked the original metal plane of Mirrodin. With this metal fungus created by the Phyrexian oil, infectious spores began to release into the air, which caused mass corruption of that once organic life on Mirrodin, in effect creating new Phyrexia as we know it. If a Mycosynth Lattice is created by Vorinclex on Kaldheim, the results could be a new Phyrexia. And this leads us to Vorinclex's larger plan, and the role Tybalt has to play in it. We know Tybalt likes to save face and say causing Doomscars on Kaldheim was ultimately his plan anyway, and being seeded by Vorinclex was just an annoying side thing. But I'm not convinced by Tybalt's bluster. I can see Tybalt causing destruction and playing deadly pranks, but to go deeper and learn about the various realms, the gods, the Doomscars, that all takes a lot of intel and planning. While Tybalt surely enjoys a good scheme here and there, I just don't see him as the plotting villain type. Like, he's more of the Joker rather than a Lex Luthor. But what if being co-opted by Vorinclex, who could have been on Kaldheim for a long time now, gave Tybalt the keys to causing all of this destruction, but all in service of Vorinclex's true plans, to Phyrexianize all of Kaldheim? Obviously, this plan has one major gap to cross, the fact that all of the realms of Kaldheim are essentially separated from one another. It's hard to spread that Phyrexian oil across those disjointed realms, unless, that is, someone has the ability to force them together. Vorinclex could have given Tybalt some knowledge of how that could be done, along with that seed in order to force his cooperation. Originally, we were told that Vorinclex simply needed eyes off of him so he could work out his plan, whatever that was, and Tybalt just needed to provide a distraction. But what if that distraction, the causing of a massive Doomscar that forces all the realms together, is in fact the mission of Vorinclex? With the realms colliding and a Doomscar created by Tybalt, the Phyrexian Mycosynth Lattice can spread throughout the realms and doom Kaldheim to Phyrexian rule. And that's where we stand in the story itself, what was given to us and how we can use that information to make a prediction of what's to come on Kaldheim. Maybe not in this initial story for this plane, but somewhere in the future. However, what does all of this mean for the future of the Phyrexian threat to the multiverse? I think there is a real good reason why we don't see much of Vorinclex or the Phyrexians in the actual cards of Kaldheim, even if their end mission is so important to the future of Kaldheim. And that's because Wizards is clearly gearing up for a massive Phyrexian expansion in the future and don't want to blow their entire Phyrexian shock factor in what Kaldheim is essentially teasing. They're bringing back the Phyrexian threat, and it's starting with Elesh Norn and her using a Vorinclex as a tool, testing out a means of Phyrexianizing the multiverse, but all of those plans need a little outside help. Enter the Planeswalker, Tezzeret. Tezzeret, I believe, will be a massive player in the Phyrexian campaign that will surely come, and that's hinted to in the blurb we got for Vorinclex. First, it says how Elesh Norn is now the new mother of machines, in a way, taking that title from Karn and becoming the new de facto leader of the Phyrexians on New Phyrexia. Elesh Norn is cold, calculating, and manipulative. She believes that what little resistance is left on New Phyrexia is all but lost, and now looks to consolidate power and move their mission across the multiverse. Only issue is the lack of a means of traveling between the planes. This is where Tezzeret comes in. Tezzeret, we know, has prior run-ins with the Phyrexians. He was sent there as a pawn of Bolas simply just to observe the power struggle there happening between the Praetors. It was clear Bolas understood the Phyrexian threat, as he had loads of knowledge about the multiverse, and Tezzeret was basically sent there just to make sure they remained only a threat contained on New Phyrexia. Tezzeret's activities on New Phyrexia have always remained a mystery, but one note we know of is that he witnessed the ascension of Elesh Norn to the mantle of Mother of Machines. But that was basically it. However, it shows that Tezzeret knows of these monsters, and that's good enough for our theory. We also know that Tezzeret, at the end of War of the Spark, was no fan of being made a pawn of. We know he was conscripted by Bolas for a vast majority of the Dragon Planeswalker's endeavors. Everything Tezzeret did was under threat of obliteration by Bolas, and that includes his power grab on the plane of Kaladesh, which resulted in a planar bridge being implanted in his semi-autonomous body. The planar bridge was always going to be a tool used by Bolas and his machinations, but as the portal was a part of Tezzeret's body, it would always truly belong to him. Even at the end of War of the Spark, with various heroes stopping Tezzeret and his portal from sending in more reinforcements to Bolas, Tezzeret explains that he hopes they managed to kill his former master, so that he could finally be free of his threats and no longer a pawn. With Bolas dealt with, Tezzeret was given that freedom, but he's still the same old nasty Tezzeret we know and love. Now free from Bolas's grasp, he surely looks to be the master of his own schemes, and there would be nothing grander than orchestrating the rise of a new Phyrexian empire. But what's in it for Tezzeret? Tezzeret isn't a Phyrexian, but he does have a lot in common with the Phyrexians. He's a mishmash of organic and inorganic material. He has a planar bridge implanted into his chest, and he grew up in a society in which it was coveted to have more and more machinery added to one's body. His original home of Esper, a shard of Alara, was basically the closest human equivalent to the ideals promoted by the Phyrexians. So it's no wonder why Tezzeret, maybe while on his mission to scout New Phyrexia for Bolas, possibly became enamored with these beings and sympathized with their overall mission. While Tezzeret may not wish to be completed into a full Phyrexian himself, he may want to lead their cause. He may be the new master behind their mission, a new father of machines, while Elesh Norn leads their forces as their mother. And now we can officially start shipping Tezzeret and Elesh Norn. I can't wait to see the fan art coming out of this one, yeesh. So this right now is all speculation, but why do I think that Tezzeret is involved at all? Where is the actual evidence from the story? Well, it's clearly laid out in how Vorinclex transported to Kaldheim, the means in which he used to travel the multiverse. It's said that this method ripped the organic material right from his body, leaving him as nothing but oil, metal, and bones, in which he had to rebuild himself a new physical form. This fits perfectly with how we know Tezzeret's planar bridge works. The reason why the army of Bolas were a bunch of zombies covered in metal was because the planar bridge couldn't transport organic material across the multiverse. So these Eternals were the best method to ensure his army could travel intact. As the Phyrexians are essentially a mix of organic and inorganic material, it's logical to believe that when Vorinclex stepped through it, it evaporated his organic bits and spit out the metal chunks on the other side, which would have killed him if Phyrexians weren't so historically stubborn. And again, we can even circle back to that Vorinclex blurb and put all the plans between Tezzeret and Elesh Norn into perspective. They picked Vorinclex for this mission because he is by far the easiest to manipulate because of his base instincts. They knew, because of Tezzeret, that the bridge would be dangerous for the Praetors to use. So Vorinclex acted as their guinea pig rather than sending someone important like Elesh Norn through first. And that initial test looks to have been a massive success. So guys, that's it! A grand plot by a disgruntled Tezzeret to become a new father of machines, the master of his own scheme for the first time in such a very long time. Was it his planar bridge that got Vorinclex to Kaldheim? Does Vorinclex have bigger plans for this plane than we first suspected? Could Kaldheim be the first of many worlds to fall to New Phyrexia, the warning sign of a great war to come? All questions that will be answered in the future, I'm sure, but as of now, with the evidence that we have, this sounds like the direction we're headed for Magic Story. Now I'm just excited to see new cards of Elesh Norn and Tezzeret and what shipping this community will inevitably do for these two. Anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know your own thoughts and theories in the comment section below. Would you be excited to see a full-blown Phyrexian multiversal campaign? And if you enjoyed the video, why not show your support for the channel by leaving us a like, subscribing, and taking that notification bell, and you can always support us over on Patreon as well, as patrons get perks like access to videos early, signed cards, and of course your name at the credit of each of my videos. You can really help us out by following the Patreon link in the description below. As always guys, thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, see ya!